Welcome to In Depth with Academia. I'm your host, Richard Price, CEO of academia.edu. And today we're diving into a truly fascinating piece of research, one that really connects the threads between technology, rural life, memory, and identity. We're looking at wooden windmills in the Polish landscape, function, heritage, and decline by Roland, Roly, Keates. I want to emphasize right away that my role here is to present a neutral overview of the paper's arguments and findings. I'm not endorsing or critiquing, just exploring what's there so you can decide what you think. So, what's the big question Roly's paper is tackling? At its heart, it's asking, why did wooden windmills matter? It's about how these windmills became symbols of rural life, markers of economic purpose and community, then gradually turned into relics, memories, even monuments. And that's significant, not just for Poland, but for anyone interested in how everyday tools and structures shape cultural identity. When we lose them, what else do we lose? Our sense of place, our history. Let's talk methods. Roly didn't limit himself to books and blueprints. He hit the road with a camera and a couple of extremely patient friends. A huge shout out to Ariel, Anya and Timek Olejniczak is woven throughout his writing. They translated, asked questions and drove across Poland from sleepy villages to windswept fields in search of these old wooden windmills. The paper blends historical research, landscape analysis and a ton of gorgeous photographs to tell its story. It's super interdisciplinary. So, it's not just about gears and sails, but communities, folklore, memory, and even the economics of bread and oil. So what did Roly find? First off, these windmills, especially the post mill or kozlak type, were once absolutely everywhere in rural Poland. Like at their peak, Greater Poland alone apparently had over 2,700. Imagine traveling from village to village, almost never losing sight of those sails. They didn't just grind grain, they pressed oilseeds during fasting seasons, sometimes sawed timber, and always became centers for gossip, trading, sometimes even matchmaking. The noise, the creaks, the thumps formed a kind of rural soundtrack, but they weren't just functional, right? Windmills were loaded with symbolism, standing on the edge of fields, marking where cultivated land met wild, embodying both safety and, in folklore, a little bit of danger or magic. Local tales featured haunted mills, clever or trickster millers, even deals with the devil. Anyway, there's always more than meets the eye with rural tech. However, decline set in fast. Once steam, electrification, and industrial roller mills arrived, the economic centre shifted. Windmills, especially the wooden ones, were super vulnerable to fire, rot, and neglect. Wars didn't help. By the late 20th century, most were gone. Some relocated to museums as heritage objects. But, and here's a twist, this very loss inspired fresh interest in saving and reimagining them. So now a handful are preserved as museums, sometimes even as private homes, or symbols in local festivals, branding, or tourism. Let's pause a sec. Random tangent, but have you ever tried bread made from flour milled in a windmill? There's this little place outside Warsaw. Actually, never mind, that's not important. But it's wild how much you remember the experience, right? Okay. Anyways, back to the topic. Roly's work also raises big questions for you. The listener. When society decides to preserve something like an old windmill, is it about saving just a structure? Or is it about keeping alive the rhythms, rituals, and stories that shaped daily life? And what gets lost when we move these buildings into museums? Do they become static, or can new meaning be created around them? Heritage, after all, is always up for debate. And as always, I want to stress, Roly's perspective is rich but not absolute. This is one lens on a messy, nuanced history. For you, maybe you live far from Poland, or never even thought about windmills except for Don Quixote or modern wind farms. But this paper offers a pretty universal takeaway. Our built environment is always in flux, and the symbols we preserve or neglect send strong signals about what we value. Technology, economy, and memory, these threads are totally interwoven, whether you're talking about a smartphone or a wooden post mill. So, to sum up, wooden windmills in the Polish landscape gives you a stunning, layered portrait of rural life, technological change, and the power of memory. Maybe next time you spot an old structure in your own town, a barn, a factory, a railway station, you'll see not just what it does or did, but what it means. And that meaning, it's up to you, your community, and how you use, remember, or maybe even forget it. Thanks so much for joining me on In Depth with Academia. If you want more, check out Roly Keates' work and keep exploring, questioning, and looking twice at the things that quietly shape your world. See you next time.